Hi, thanks for joining us for the Family Plot, Gardening in the Mid-South. I'm Chris Cooper. It's spring and gardeners are getting ready for another growing season. Today we're helping get ready by answering lots of viewer questions. Shrubs, trees, seeds, and bugs. That's just ahead on the Family Plot, Gardening in the Mid-South.
Production funding for the Family Plot, Gardening in the Mid-South is provided by the WKNO Production Fund, the WKNO Endowment Fund, and by viewers like you. Thank you.
Welcome to the Family Plot. I'm Chris Cooper. Joining me today is Joellen Diamond. Joellen is the Director of Landscape at the University of Memphis. And Booker T. Lee is here. Mr. Booker is a UT Extension agent right here in Shelby County.
Thanks for having me on the show. Glad to be here.
Thank you all for being here. This is going to be fun.
Yes.
All right?
I hope so.
Oh, it will be.
Okay.
It will definitely be fun. All right. So here's our first viewer email. I have dogwood problems. 2 years ago, my dogwood died. I bought a new one last year and it's doing the same thing. The leaves are turning brown and falling off. It's a slow process, but it keeps getting worse. It is in full sun. I water it once or twice a day. I live in the desert. I don't know if it's too much or if I'm not watering enough. How do I keep my dogwood from turning brown and dying? And this is from Jenny from Goshen, Utah.
Wow.
Goshen, Utah.
Right. So think about this for a second, right? Dogwood, full sun. So what do you think about that, Booker?
One of the things that we take dogwood tree and move from their habitat, they normally out in the woods somewhere, and then we bring them into our landscape. And they like to be under other tree, because they're in the woods, so they're under other tree, and they grow by other tree. So we put them in full sun. They're probably not just going to do the best in that and everything. Then you probably give them a lot of water in the sun, probably some of the things that's going on with that causing that tree to do that. So we don't move it from its habitat and put it into our landscape. It's going to have some problem with that dogwood tree. I think it needs to be out under another tree some kind of way.
Okay. Maybe the shade of another tree. What about you,
The
Joe?
shade of another tree or the shade of a building, somewhere in the shade, though.
Yeah, you need to shade, yeah.
And you know, he might. It doesn't say this here, but it does. It sounds like he's planted in the yard. So maybe try a container, and because you know you could move the container, right? Plant around, you know, to follow the shade somewhere. Soil moist crystals added to the ground could help with the watering. But if he's watering once or twice a day, I would want to know if it actually needed water.
Okay.
You know,
it is the desert.
Is he going to, it is the desert, but does he have any
desert.
organic matter incorporated in right around the actual plant where it's planted? I would hope some organic matter would help also with soil, with water retention and,
Oh, he definitely
and
would.
help.
In the desert. He
desert.
definitely
Yeah.
would.
And you might want to try to put some little mulch around the tree, but keep it off the bark of the tree and try to keep that soil a little cooler sometimes.
Okay.
Out there, because it makes it kind of think that it's out in the other tree. Put some mulch around it, but put you like something around the base of the tree for the mulch not laying real close to the trunk, against the trunk.
Okay.
But he don't have a problem. The dog got to have full
Right, yes,
sun.
full sun, you live in the
Yeah.
desert. And then something else too, when you think about dogwood trees, they're shallow rooted trees.
Okay.
Right, so yeah, that intense heat on those roots, it's gonna be a problem.
We probably was you might put a little mulch around it, might help some.
That is gonna be a problem, Jenny, so I hope that helped you out there, all right? Good luck to you.
Good luck.
All right, here's our next viewer email. I have several boxwood growing in large terracotta pots. One plant is healthy, the other two look sick. What is happening here? Lynn in Hillsboro, Illinois. Joellen, you know a little bit about Illinois, so what do you think is going on with the boxwood there?
Well, it looks like they have spider mites.
Uh-huh.
And, you know, there's several things you can do. You can use some horticulture oil or some neem oil on them. Or you can, you know, use an insecticide that's labeled for spider mites, insecticidal soap or something like that. Depends on what you want to do, but read the label directions. That's what's going on with those. And I would just like to, you know, they're in containers. So how are they separated? Where are they at? Maybe if one is obviously not got anything and it's doing better, try to replicate that environment where the other two are. Because, you know, sometimes spider mites and stuff, bugs in general, attack plants that are under stress.
Right, exactly right.
So, you know, that one is not. So try to replicate the environment that has for the other two containers.
Okay. I'll give that. Booker, anything you want to add to that?
A lot of things when you grow plants in container now, sometimes sometimes the roots just might get too small. They might get root bound in that container and everything. And so when I do water my plants in the container, I like for to make sure I drain and empty that water out of the container after a while.
Okay.
You want to sit in there, but make sure you got a hole in the container where it can drain out, empty that water out of there. And that could be a problem you have with in that container. Maybe it got too large for the container, and that could be a problem with that. And also could be poor drainage, and the water kind of stand on that plant and cause them to do that.
Right, which leads to the stress that Jordan was talking about. But yeah, so spider mites, yeah, use your oils. They're going to attack new growth. Stippling is what that is on the leaves. It's stippling because the spider mites, of course, are sucking out cell content. While you have those little white spots or white blotches. So yeah, just read and follow the label on your oils.
Follow the label.
You'll be
Read the
just
label.
fine. So your oils are insecticidal soap, and I think that'll do it for you.
I think
It'd be
she'll
good,
look
yeah.
fine.
Thank you for that question. We appreciate that. Here's our next viewer email. I just bought 2 barberries. I have been researching the Japanese barberry and found it draws ticks and it's invasive. Are all barberry plants invasive and draw ticks? Which are safe from our garden? Please help. I want to dig them up after reviewing several videos on Japanese barberry dangers, ticks, and Lyme disease. And this is May. So this is an interesting question we have here, right? So we're talking about the Japanese barberry and the fact that it draws ticks. And we know barberries are invasive,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So are all the barberry plants invasive and draw ticks?
Well, yes and no. There are native.
Okay.
There is one native barberry, canadensis. That's native to the United States. But the thing is, I want to know, where is she at? Is she in an area that's prone? Because here where we are, we're not real prone to having tick populations
Right.
and Lyme disease. We have ticks, but not Lyme disease. But if she's in an area that is prevalent with that, then yeah, I would definitely not want to plant barberries because deer are attracted. They will eat barberries.
Okay.
So you want to get deer-resistant plants because any kind of animal that is attracted to your yard is going to then attract the ticks and drop the ticks with the Lyme disease. So if you can keep, and I think some of the preventative for the ticks with Lyme disease is have a mulch away from your house, and then a lawn area, a large lawn area before a woods, something like that. You want to keep the litter down because that's the other thing with barberries, they lose their leaves. So then people don't always clean out underneath them, and so they have a nice perfect place for the ticks to breed. So that's the other problem with them.
Yeah, because it's a sticky plant. Yeah, so you don't clean
people
out the
don't.
leaves under it. Yeah,
Right.
because you don't want to get stuck. So you definitely look for maybe another plant or
Another
something.
plant,
I
yeah.
would look for another plant.
Right, just to be safe. She wants to be safe.
I would be safe. Yeah, because and do try to look if you are in an area where there's a lot of animals, especially deer. Then I would go with deer-resistant plants because you don't want to bring the animals into your yard.
Right.
You want to keep them out so the ticks are less likely to be in your yard.
Exactly right. So thank you for your question, man. We appreciate that. Here's our next viewer email. I live near the Four Corners of New Mexico. Is it possible to grow pistachios and cherries from seed successfully? And this is Lori from YouTube. So the Four Corners of New Mexico, is it possible?
Yes, it's
grow from
possible.
seed?
I mean, in fact, cherry trees. Now, the cherry for edible cherries, yeah, you can grow it from seed. It's going to take a long time
It's
either
gonna take
way.
a while.
Yeah, long time.
Either way,
Wow.
because when you're talking seedlings, and it's going to be hard. A lot of pistachios, because actually pistachio forests or groves are in that area.
Right, right.
So they harvest them then, but they usually are grafted onto something. So a lot of the literature that I found said that it takes a while to grow it from seed to get it to be able to cut it off to put a graft on it.
Wow.
So I mean, but it can be done.
Yeah.
I mean, it depends on how much time you have, and
Because they do grow them there.
they
again,
grow them there, and there's a certain way you have to stratify especially with pistachio.
Yeah.
There's a whole list of scarifications and cold temperatures, and I mean it's certain days and weeks, and so but it's a science, but it can be done. And there's a couple of publications that from New Mexico, the fruit tree in pistachio area that will be available, I guess, on our website for her to look at. But the cherry trees, they recommend not the sweet varieties, but the sour varieties. And I don't know what the seed is that she's got. But they do recommend the sour cherry varieties, and I think a couple of varieties are Balaton and Danube for that particular area of northwest of the northern.
Just need
part.
patience, I guess, on that.
Yeah, you're gonna,
Be patient on
be
that.
patient.
Patient,
Patient,
yeah.
you're coming to take some time.
So scarification, the cold chilling requirement is something you're gonna have to do as well, for sure. And something else too, Lori. Yeah, contact your local extension office.
There you go.
Yeah, they would have some information, available for you about, growing those, plants from seed.
You probably need more than one, when they get up some side though for to do well, especially in there for the pollination process in there. So,
Right.
Yeah.
But it can be done.
It can be done.
Successfully. It's just going to take some patience, requires some
good
patience. And check with your local extension office, Lori, and I think they may have some information for you. So thank you for that question. All right, here's our next viewer email. I have had this plant invade my yard in the last 5 to 7 years. It appears to be a wild strawberry of some sorts. It invades any new scratched up ground or new mulch like wildfire. Off-the-shelf herbicides only seem to stem the tide for a bit, and it's almost impossible to keep pulling by hand. It does not seem to be in my neighbor's yards that are very close. How do I get rid of this stuff? And this is Mark Booker. So how does he get rid of, and that's probably, Indian mock strawberries, what that is. So how do you get rid of that?
Well, I try to put it up I can, though, if not too much in there. You think by putting a pre-merge down sometime it might help some in the year, try to keep from coming up again? That's what I would do. And also I try to make sure that when I put it up in there, I try to get the root system too. Because if you leave any kind of root system in the soil, it's going to come back again and stuff in there.
Right, which may be the problem because, you've been dealing with this 5 to 7 years.
So,
so you got to get the root system.
You got to get the root system out of there.
Yeah.
What do you think, Joella?
Yeah, I mean, you have to get every bit of the root. It reminds me of nutgrass. But any little root that's left will grow into another plant. So when you are digging it up, I would suggest getting a shovel, even if it's a trowel, and dig sideways and try to lift the whole area to try to get all the root system up.
Okay. Yeah, that's something else to think about.
Yeah, because the root system is going to come back again and everything in there. And they talk about you a pre-merge in the soil when you do that and still help.
I think a pre-merge, will probably help. But I always start with cultural practices
first.
Yeah. So whatever it is that you're trying to grow there, make sure that it is appropriate for that area, right? So of course, get your soil tested and things like that. So pre-merge, but if it's already there, like it is in this instant, if you want to talk about a post-emerge, I would go with a three-way herbicide. Something that will control broadleaf weeds because wild strawberry plants are broadleaf
weeds. Yeah.
Right, so they're broadleaf weeds. So again, if you're going to use herbicide, I would read and follow the label on that. But I mean that is an option. But I always like to go with the cultural practices first. Make sure your pH is where it needs to be, that you have the right grass or plants in the area that you want to cover the ground, right? To provide competition for this strawberry weed that we're talking about. And then, if that doesn't do the trick, use the post-emerge.
Read the label.
Read the label. Read the label and you'll be fine. So we thank you for that question, Mark. Good luck. 5 to 7 years. Good luck. All right, here's our next via email. There is a mulberry tree in our backyard with some dark coloring on it. This picture is from June. We cut off the little stub of branch around that time. The dark coloring has expanded further down the tree since then. This is another picture from September. We have been in this house about 6 months, so I'm not sure how long this has been an issue. What is happening? And this is from Brooke. And by the way, Brooke, excellent pictures, right? So she documented everything, so it's made it a little easier for us to see, what's going on. So as a tree expert here, what do you think that may be?
I think it's a slime flux.
Okay.
This happens to tree. Mulberry is one of them. Is notorious to have this, and it not necessarily is a death sentence for the plant because if it will heal over, it'll stop oozing. But if it doesn't, then it'll keep going, and it is unsightly. And if it keeps going, it will start smelling.
It smells bad.
And so it's just going to be up to her is how much of it you want to take. Sure. You want to wait till it heals over, if it's going to heal over, or do you want to get rid of it and start over again with something else? If it starts smelling bad and you're going to be out in your backyard, you may not want to keep it around. If it starts smelling bad.
So there you have it, Brooke. Yeah, if it starts smelling bad, just okay.
yeah.
I mean, you know what it is, swine flux. All right. And again, it's not a death sentence, so it may be okay.
May not be.
May not be. So it may not be. Okay. But if you have any questions, Brooke, do contact a certified arborist.
Yes.
And maybe have a certified arborist come out and take a look at their tree and just assess the health of the tree.
True.
Okay.
Yeah, they can do things.
So make sure you do that in your area. That's for sure.
Make sure they know it's safe and everything.
Right. Exactly right. So thank you for that, Brooke. Here's our next viewer email. I received a Canocyparis lawsoniana elwoodii indoor plant as a gift. How do I care for it? This is my first plant, and this is Anga in Singapore.
Singapore, that's whoa.
On YouTube, Singapore.
Yes.
This is pretty good. All right. So elwoodii.
Yes.
She received it as an indoor gift.
Well,
Interesting.
since Singapore is in the tropics,
The tropics, right?
I would see this is actually in the zones 5 through 8, it'll get up to 20 feet tall.
Oh, yeah.
So, but in the tropics, in the container, it's not going to get that big.
Yeah.
But it's a conifer, so she's going to need to make sure it's well drained.
Yes.
And don't overwater it.
Don't overwater it. Right. It's got to be well drained.
And it's going to need a lot of light too, because there's a lot of foliage there to sustain. So it's going to need some light.
Okay. Wow. How about that?
Yeah.
Indoor.
Indoors, yes.
You'll get that tall?
No, it won't get that big
tall. Yeah, okay.
indoors, I don't think. No. It's
But
in a
just make
container.
sure, that plenty of sunlight.
Sun and well drained, and don't keep it. Keep it on what I call the dry side of moist.
Okay. Try some.
Right? Yeah. I mean, let it dry out a little bit between waterings, because you want it to be well drained. Because if it starts getting dead spots on it, that's probably a sign of it's got too much water.
Too much water. Okay. All right. So if it's in a window, and we were thinking south-facing.
Yeah,
window,
definitely a south-facing
are you going to
window.
have to?
I would think you would have to turn it.
turn it.
Yes.
Rotate it, yeah.
Just keep it straight, because it's a tall, narrow plant. So you'd want an evergreen. And she may want to, as it grows, she might want to, put it in bigger containers and whatever she wants to do. But yeah, I think that's really neat.
Pretty cool.
Okay.
Yes.
Pretty cool. As an indoor, it's
an
funny.
indoor plant in the tropics would
In
be
the
a
tropics,
conifer. It's interesting.
That's pretty good.
That's nice, ain't it? Man, that's
Have
great.
fun, Anga.
It is.
Enjoy that. Enjoy your plant.
I'm going to say, have fun.
Yeah, that's going to be pretty good. Have fun with that. So, thank you for that question. Again, Singapore is pretty cool. All right, here's our next viewer email. These mushrooms have been growing around the base of the trunk of my oak tree the last few falls. Should I be worried about this? And I already see you, Joy. I see the head nod. So
yes, I'm afraid you should, because it is armillaria.
Yep.
And there is no coming back from armillaria in a tree. It will just slowly take over and take out the tree. Yeah, very slowly, but because that's a very large tree. But that's the sign of armillaria in the tree.
And
I would definitely tell them to get a certified arborist to look at that.
I was about to mention that. I would definitely get a certified arborist out to take a look
when
at
I
that.
see something like that in that big of a tree, I would definitely want an arborist opinion of what I should do next.
Right, because that is a pretty large oak tree. We know armillaria will attack oak trees.
Yes.
Yeah.
Seems like in more than one place too around the tree. Yeah, I saw 2 or 3 locations. So the main is the tree in kind of bad shape right now. Yeah. Begin to do that. So you might get somebody to look at that real good. Certified arborist look at
assess
that.
the health of that tree, because you don't want that tree to become a hazard.
No, and we don't know if it's been dropping limbs or anything either. So
Right.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, although those mushrooms look beautiful, that was a beautiful picture. Yes, it can be detrimental to the health of the plant. Yeah, get a certified arborist.
Just look at that. Yeah.
Okay. All right, here's our next viewer email. My dogwood continues to bloom each year, but it doesn't look healthy and the bark has peeled away in many different spots. I keep thinking it is dying, but it continues to bloom year after year. Is there anything I can do to fix this problem? This is Carolyn in Memphis, Tennessee. So, Booker, what do you think about that?
Like got a canker disease in there, and I also when it's not blooming real good. A lot of times, a lot of your nutrients not going up to the plant because of that spot on there.
Right.
And also, she probably got it out in full sun when it makes costing to do that. And some damage that tree too to make that canker come in like that. I don't know if there's something hit it or whatever happened to that, but when they're not blooming well, you have a lot of nutrients not getting up to the plant like it should have. And also, she probably maybe getting too much fertilizer also on there to cause them to do that, especially the nitrogen fertilizer kept holding back on the bloom some too. But the canker disease, what a lot of nutrients not getting up to the plant where it should be in there.
Right. So you can't get.
Right,
it's trying to go around the area
and
to
not
get
in
up to
there.
the tree. Right. So,
Yeah,
Jalen?
well, it looks like it's trying to callus over that area.
It looks like it is.
But still, when, like Booker said, there's no nutrients going up into the tree in that area. And probably the reason why it's blooming so much is because when something is stressed and think it's going to die, it will try to put out more seeds to try to survive. So that's probably why it's blooming more. But I mean, you can keep it alive as long as you can, or you can start and put another plant in, buy another tree and plant it in a place that maybe it would like better, like some more shade.
Right.
It's a shady area for a dogwood.
Right. Yeah. So just keep it as healthy as you possibly can at this point, because it is definitely stress. And then I'm sitting here thinking about dogwood borers, because the tree's already stressed. There's areas for the dogwood borer to get in there. Start eating away at the cambium layer. So that's another, layer, to this situation here. So.
Yeah, we didn't see the base of the tree. We didn't
right.
see
We didn't see the base. Right. Exactly right.
Maybe something going on down there too.
Yeah, exactly right. So Carolyn, yes, that's the issue there. It's a pretty big issue. So just try to keep that tree as healthy as you possibly can and enjoy the blooms while you can.
I never had a dogwood tree in my yard.
So we thank you for that question, Carolyn. All right, here's our next via email. Last year, I found this mass of caterpillars on the trunk of my black walnut tree. I have seen tent caterpillars in walnut trees many times before, but never a mass like this. Are these tent caterpillars, and will they migrate into the canopy? I eliminated them with insecticidal soap while they were close to the ground. This is Jamie from Springfield, Tennessee. Yeah, beautiful picture there. Jamie, we appreciate that. So yes, we know that those are walnut caterpillars, right? And Jamie pretty much did what I said you should do. Yeah, if they're that close to the ground and you can reach them, just take them out.
Take them out,
Yeah, get you a bucket of soapy water and just scrape them out into the bucket. But she used the insecticidal soap, which works. So they're not tent caterpillars, they're walnut caterpillars. And yes, they will try to migrate, to the upper canopy of the tree, but you got them before then. Again, you use something that's safe, insecticidal soap. So I would have just scraped it off and a bucket of. That's good. A good picture and good job. You use insecticidal soap, so that is something that we do recommend, and it worked.
It worked.
All right, so we appreciate that question. All right, here's our next viewer email. Is it true that all hybrid tea roses quit flowering even if they are getting the correct nutrients? If not, what could I do to help an older hybrid tea rose bloom? It gets full sun from about noon to about 5 p.m. I give it a half dose of 18, 24, 16 rose food and a half dose of 10, 52, 10 and a gallon of water once a week. Its leaves are beautiful, but maybe a little small. I will try Epsom salts, magnesium sulfate, as one of your guests recommended. What else would help? And this is Charles. So let's go back to this for a second. Half dose of 18, 24, 16 rose food. Then we come back with another half dose of 10, 52, 10 and a gallon of water once a week. What do you think, Booker?
One thing I think she's getting too much fertilizer, really, especially the first number on the back of fertilizer. I think it's probably doing a lot of growth in there, trying to be growing and stay green and everything. It not have time to set for the blooms to come on there.
Oh, the leaves are beautiful.
Yeah, the leaves are beautiful, but that's why it's not having for the bloom though. She's giving too much growth on there, green growth on there. I would hold back on that first number some, and I wouldn't fertilize that often.
Tell us what that first number is again.
Nitrogen. Okay. I get more of the second number. In there.
And the second number is?
Not phosphorus in there. Yeah, you get more phosphorus in there. And she can go buy some stuff like superphosphate or something and put right in there and work into the soil. And that might help some on that road, Jordan. What do you think?
Well, I think, she might want to do a pH test because I'm worried with all the fertilizer. I don't know how the pH is there. I do know roses like
they're heavy
acidic.
feeders.
Yeah, and they eat.
Feeders. Right.
But that might be just a little much. Right. And I would like to do a pH test just to see where I was as a marker.
Right.
But I think I would hold off on some of the fertilizer because, again, plants that think they're going to, have to hurry up and, the season's going to be over because I'm not getting the nutrients that I normally get, will end up trying to bloom
Okay.
and set seed.
Right.
So she needs to think, the plants need to think they're a little under stress for that time of year to be able to bloom. And if you keep free-flowing fertilizer to them, they're thinking, oh, there's no end in sight. I can just grow, 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 grow.
Yeah.
So I would hold off on some of the fertilizer.
Right. Yeah,
But I
it's
would
a
like to
seed
see a
find.
pH test because I'd like to know what's
just to
going on in the
see, right.
soil.
Yeah.
Let's just see. And again, this is an older hybrid
Yeah.
tea rose. And we know again that roses are heavy
feed,
feeders.
yeah.
But I'm just looking at
Yeah,
this.
there's a
it's
lot
like-
of fertilizer you're giving in there.
And then you want to come with the
Yeah.
magnesium sulfate,
Yeah.
which is Epsom salt. So it's like, wow.
Yeah, well, yeah,
I
she's
would
getting
like
too
to
much
know
there.
a pH test to see what's going on. And they can test for the magnesium content too.
And organic
So-
in the soil too. But a lot of times,
Yeah.
sometimes you might have all that. I know one time that you might have changed that road to another location. Sometimes that soil might have got overused, so it's been there for a while, and the soil is not producing good. Sometimes the soil just get over too much stuff in there that's not producing well. So she might want to look at that too, and try to maybe move to another location somewhere and start all over again with some new fresh soil around there.
Okay.
And so that's what I would try to be just one or two roses, and doing that.
Right. But I'm with Joanne. I definitely want to know the pH.
The pH soil,
Yeah,
yeah.
I'd be curious enough to
I'm
know
curious.
what that is.
That's
you
what
know, and all of
I'm
that.
curious to know what's
Yeah.
going on in the root zone.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
Yeah, I always check the soil pH and everything. We said recommend soil test.
Soil test.
Don't
Soil
guess.
test. So thank you, Charles. We appreciate that. Question? Hope that helps you out. All right, so work with Joel, and that was fun.
It was good.
Enjoy that.
That's
Yeah,
fun. That's good.
Enjoy that.
Thank
man.
y'all much.
Good
Thank y'all much.
questions.
Remember, we love to hear from you. Send us an email or letter. The email address is familyplot@wkno.org, and the mailing address is Family Plot, 7151 Cherry Farms Road, Cordova, Tennessee 38016. Or you can go online to familyplotgarden.com. That's all we have time for today. Thanks for joining us. We have the answers to hundreds more gardening questions online at familyplotgarden.com. Go see if we have already answered your questions. If we have not, send it to us. Be sure to join us next week for the Family Plot, Gardening in the Mid-South. Be safe.